and everything seemed to be a bit better, less rough than even 2 years ago.
Yeah, I think so too. There's a couple of things that are going on. Like there's been a progress with the development of the brushes that you can use in this program anyway. And there's also like some nice anti-aliasing going on so that it's sort of can look a bit softer and you can get a bit of a better depth of field further in the distance. But like with Tilt Brush, for example, like I sort of talk to the Tilt Brush guys quite a lot, and we're constantly giving them some feedback to try to keep pushing them to create all our dreams.
And the wave, this kind of waves you are using at the beginning and at the end of the performance seems to be from a different type of graphics. You know, these kind of moving waves.
Yeah,
And
that's right. That's actually
white blue waves. Very, very interesting. The texture is totally different from everything else.
well,
Or
it's
it
a good
seemed to be very
observation.
different.
Yeah, it's
Sorry?
a good observation because actually that particle effect, this particle wave, is actually made by one of the programmers that works on this. And what he can do with that particle system is he can make it reactive to the sound. And so when I'm up at the VJ deck, I have a bunch of little sliders. And when some of them are changing the size of the wave, how much it is moving, how high it grows. And so there's a bunch of variables that you can play with in real time. And I think this combination of kind of like art and real-time interactive visual is kind of like the future for this platform. Like if I can start to, sometimes you would have seen little sort of like little diamond shards flying around. Like those are little particles that I designed, and now they're just starting to introduce these new tools to give me more power over like controlling my own little particles and things like that.
Yeah, it's very interesting because also it gives you the possibility to have some curves and a different relationship from the rough geometrical variations we have at the moment in the VR world. I mean, suddenly it's like if suddenly you had dealing with textures and shapes in a total different and variations of shapes in a maybe more subtle way.
Mm. Yeah, totally. And I think that, I mean, what you started to see sometimes, like people were interacting with these particles. Like if you hold your trigger down, then the particles come towards you. But like in my VR projects outside of this, for example, like I'll design an environment, and then if you sort of put your hand into it, it will send like a wave, like a ripple all the way through the environment. So that feeling that it's not just like that, it reacts to your presence. I think like that sort of thing is what I'm sort of interested in designing kind of moving forward.
Yeah, I'm really interested into all these things. I mean, we should really talk about different things I have in mind because it's exactly what I think the VR could also give you. I mean, beyond just the world of video games. I mean, because you can really create some different relationship with the virtual world and being connected to graphics, to visuals, to emotions and feelings in total different way. As you know, because you are in the middle of all this, of course.
And I have all these lines connecting me to these people right now.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Oh, wow.
Can I ask something?
That's really cool.
You hear me?
Yes?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Sure.
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you for coming, Jean-Michel. I admire your music, and it's really cool to be here.
Where are you? Where are you from? Where are you?
I'm from Colombia, but I live in Berlin now.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm also a musician. And I wanted to ask you, what is your ideas with music and VR? What would you like to work in the future in this medium?
I really would like to, I'm really interested more and more in artificial intelligence and VR. Actually, this is going to change entirely our relationship as musicians with sounds and with creativity, because we know that probably in 10 years' time from now, I mean, algorithm will be able to create original graphics, original movies, original stories, original music, and we should not be scared about it because it's going to be a very exciting challenge to reposition ourselves as creators, as composers, as musicians, for instance, if we're talking about music, with those different tools. And what we see today, which is very interesting, if you can, I mean, the technique for visual arts now and music are closer and closer. I mean, they are more or less the same kind of softwares. I mean, when I started, I always wanted to be involved in. I started being involved in visual arts myself, then moving to music, and then I always considered those two medium very similar. This is the reason why, at a very early stage, I wanted to inject integrate. I mean, giant projections on buildings and lights and lasers in my shows, because for me it's great vocabulary, the grammar of electronic music. So of course, I mean, for me this is a premiere. I mean, it's a premiere for all of us, because I mean, doing I mean, what SUTU has achieved today, I mean, on a full album, full piece of music live like this is a real world premiere, and this is just the beginning. And it's very exciting because you can see how we can connect between musicians and visual artists to actually join forces to push the boundaries of what a live show in the future could be. I always dreamed about doing a concert in space. Today it's possible.
Well, I was going to add also, like, one thing that we're like usually, or it's important to realize, like, when we are creating art in VR, you know, it's a really spatial practice. And so, like, this practice of, like, painting something, I'm, like, moving my body through the space. But the possibility for me to start moving my body and different gestures that I make, and for example, like what JMJ was saying, like the AI recognizing certain gestures that I make through my body's movements, and then knowing to be able to trigger certain visuals in response to those gestures, like this kind of concept of like our body's whole performance, creating the, like, really manipulating the entire environment. Like when I'm doing these artworks and moving them around and drawing like a big shape like this, like I feel like God. So then it's just like enhancing all those God moments. It's like, what else could we do? You know, if I do this big gesture and then all of us kind of start moving with this big gesture or something. I think there's like so many possibilities for the performance mixed with the art and the music. I really want to explore that.
No, I totally agree. I'm sure that SUTU would agree, but I think that, you know, which is quite, I mean, as usual, sci-fi is always showing us the future. And when you see lots of sci-fi movies talking about avatars and even the last Steven Spielberg movie in which SUTU has been involved with all this kind of world, I mean, where you can project yourself in a different world, is actually what you do when you're reading a book, what you do when you are listening to music. You are projecting yourself in imaginary world, a world you create with your brain and with your imagination. And this is what dreams are made about. And which is very interesting with the VR world is actually you can actually visualize your dreams. You can visualize, for instance, the fact that you let's imagine that you are listening to some music and you think about a landscape and an environment like SUTU created for us today. But the main difference is now you can visualize it. You can go into it really, not only because you are asleep, but being awake. And this is something that's going to change everything. I mean, visiting our dreams. In real time, and so on and so forth. And you can and then also creating for lots of people. And this is also what the VR world is and described so well in lots of movies and stories already. The fact that you can project your avatar into another world, living different lives, and it's a sense of freedom.
But we can also move around, and that's completely different to having a dream. I was at your O2 show in London, and it was fantastic. And you had an amazing light show, but people were sitting in their seats. Your latest album was quite electronic and quite dancey, lots of beats, and unfortunately everyone felt inclined to sit down. Here I'm in my kitchen, as it is. I was able to dance around, groove, shake shapes and all that sort of stuff and enjoy your music. And that's what I couldn't get at the O2 when you played, but it is what I can get through this medium.
Of course, I totally agree.
Very much.
I don't like to talk too much about ideas for the future, because as long as they're not done, they are just ideas. But I think that I totally agree with you. What I would like to do, and it's something that I have in mind, I would like to share with SUTU and the TheWaveVR team in the very near future, is actually to create a real gig, a real concert in the VR world, where actually you can stay in your kitchen, you can be in a plane, you can be on top of a mountain or wherever, and enjoying the concert, dancing or doing whatever you do. I mean, wherever you are, and that's something that of course is a total game changer.
And I think that it can also interface with the if you are having a live concert. For example, I could be in VR and affecting the visuals that you are showing at your live performance. Like, that's also possible. As a next step, like that could be done sort of tomorrow. Doesn't have to be a year from now, sort of thing, or 10 years from now.
But at the moment, the only problem is actually we are stuck with the cable of our headset. And
that's right.
VR, and this is the reason why. I mean, the next stage, and we are all waiting this with, and we can't wait. Is actually to be able to be free and to be wireless one way or another, and having the fact that the VR can be then will be more popular and more accessible, because as we know, the VR equipment is still quite expensive. Even if it's much less expensive than 5 years ago, but it's still not what we would expect for general audience.
It's getting there.
I like the tether.
It's getting there quickly.
I don't want to walk off a balcony.
Yes, this is very true. But a very good advice: close your window.
Or I don't want to run into the large TV. The tether does keep you safe. How will you resolve the safety?
But what you have to understand is actually the future of VR could be with headset, but could be also with which could be also a mixture of 3D and VR. For instance, very soon you will have some LED screen and being able to watch screen without glasses. It's already the case with the new Red smartphone just released this month, where you have you can watch a movie in 3D without glasses. I mean, you have few people experimenting this, and then you could totally imagine that if you don't want, for one reason or another, being stuck with some glasses, you could have, of course, it will be a different experience, but you can imagine that in the future you can be immersed with a big screen in front of you, being in 3D, and having, sharing the same kind of experience.
Jean-Michel Jarre слушает.
Hey, Jean-Michel, it's Nicole. Have you guys already talked about your inspiration for the album cover, and starting with the visuals first and the different kinds of watchers? I think it's so cool, kind of how you wrote this record and wrote the music.
Yes, thank you for asking. And actually, this is I should explain that a little more, because the reason why we are together with Nicole, all the WaveVR team and SUTU is coming from my new album, where I started this album in a very special way by starting from the visual of my first album called Equinoxe, where some of you, I'm sure, are aware of this album, with these strange creatures, these strange watchers watching us, I always wondered who are they, and what happened to them today, what would happen to them in the future. And then for the first time in my life, I wrote an album like a soundtrack for the story I had in mind of who are these creatures, and uh, uh, and I very quickly said, okay, these watches for me are really symbolizing, in a sense, technology watching us. Like since I started, the technology has evolved from analog to digital, and tomorrow to AI, and uh, and then technology is also, we are spending a lot of time watching our technology, watching our smartphones and tablets, and this technology is also watching us, studying us. I mean, selling product to us that in order to sell product to us that we are not necessarily need, and also spying in our private lives. And with AI, we know that the relationship between machine and human beings are going to be closer and closer. We should not necessarily be afraid of that. And then I imagine this kind of scenario where we could go in the future to a more peaceful and blue and green future, and the other one more dystopian and more apocalyptic. And then I got the idea to start from the visual of the cover of the first album, and I found on Instagram a very talented graphic artist called Philippe Odas from Czechia, and actually is following you on Instagram. So too, I saw that we are all part of the same
Hudas on
club now.
Instagram.
And and then I asked him to conceive from ideas I had those two covers. And I did the soundtrack, the music like a soundtrack fitting one future or the other. It's the reason why in the album you have more pop and bright and melodic moments, and more, I mean, darker moments. And then I met with the WaveVR team in Los Angeles, and then talking about all this, we decided that we could join forces to try to create the audiovisual version of this album. And then SUTU has been kind enough to say, hey, I'm really ready to play the game and to try to conceive the entire world for the album, and here we are.
Fantastic. Really good.
And I just
And I must say that the first time I met the Wave VR, we immediately clicked very quickly together, having the same kind of opinion and view about what we could do together. And of course, and with SUTU also, it has been so far a real excitement, a real pleasure to be able to share vibes and ideas, and to create this bridge between the visual and the music that I always wanted to achieve in my life as a musician.
Wow, that's great.
Yay.
We're so honored.
And thank you also, all of you, because I mean, joining this is something also part of the experience. I always considered that in a concert, for instance, or in a set, a DJ set or whatever, I mean, the real result is not only what you are providing on stage, is the addition of what's going on stage, what you're doing, and the audience. It's a community event, and this is today more than ever what makes this whole thing very exciting. Is actually we're sitting today in different parts of the world and just talking to each other within this environment. Without you guys, it wouldn't exist, and that is something that we should never forget. I mean, and the future is ours because we can really build this kind of community all together, and this is very important.
Jean-Michel,
What do
when
you
you
think?
saw your blue dot 2 years ago, what's it like from your side when you look out and see us in the crowd? Do you feel the energy?
Sorry, could you repeat that? It was not very, you were not very loud. And to tell you the truth, I'm going back from New York, and I had a big flu, and I'm half deaf because of the plane. So if you can please talk a little louder, that would be great.
Yeah, I was just saying, saw your blue dot 2 years ago, first time live, and it was obviously amazing. What's it like from your side when you're on the stage looking out? Do you feel the energy of the crowd? I'm sure you must, because it was amazing.
Actually, it's like it's very funny because I was thinking about this a few minutes ago by watching you around me, and this is exactly the same kind of thing. It's a very friendly feeling. The fact that actually you do some music in your home studio on your own, SUTU certainly understand what I'm saying because sharing the same experience today. And suddenly you are on stage and you are sharing your music that you've done in your kitchen, and in front of thousands or even 100,000 or 10,000 of people. And first of all, it's of course a big excitement, big privilege, and then it's always very moving moments. And at one moment, after maybe 5 minutes on stage, I forget all this, and it's just suddenly coming like sharing exciting moments all together, like being in a party where there is no hierarchy between the stage and the audience, but we are all building the moment all together. And this is always what I. It's the reason why I love events so much and performances so much. And for me, every performance is like a one-off event. Is the reason why that for me touring can be a bit exhausted because for every performance, every gig, I would make a sound check of 2 hours to just think that the concert that night is going to be a unique one. And this is, I think, very important to me and very important for the audience, of course, as well.
Yeah.
Jean-Michel, you use a lot of analog synths, but for example, have you thought about programming your own instruments in virtual reality so you can play it inside? Like, are you keen to play digital sound also, or are you just using analog instruments?
No, I'm using for quite a while actually analog instruments, hardware and software. And for this album, for instance, I used probably 50% of analog and digital, and even also I love. It's very interesting what's going on in the electronic music at the moment because we started with analog instruments, hardware, then the plugins on softwares started to emulate and imitate hardware, and now for the past 8-10 years, you have really some plugins which are absolutely different from analog synthesizers, as we know. And with Euroracks and this all crazy modules we can use now, it's like if suddenly people are imitating plugins in the hardware world. And I think this kind of go between the virtual world and the software and hardware is very exciting these days. And actually, I must say that I'm going from one world to another in a very easy way. And also I'm always curious about new equipment. While I was in the middle of the recording session for the Equinoxe Infinity, I found on Kickstarter a very interesting small instruments created by two people from Netherlands called the GR1, and it's a granular synthesis small hardware synthesizer. And why it's exciting is because it's very easy to use, and you can put any sample inside, and you can go into the grains of the harmonic content very easily, and doing lots of things. I used it, for instance, in the part 5, if the wind could speak. These kind of vocals you can see behind is actually.
What's the name of this instrument?
It's a GR1. GR1.
Okay,
GR-1. It's a
I'm
very
also
interesting one. And then I used it for instance, transforming vocal sample, and I took some grains, and I mixed the grains the grains of the harmonic content in a different order to get this kind of almost human. I wanted to express what could be the voice of artificial intelligence, how it could sound, almost human but not quite. And then that's a very good example of an instrument I found on Kickstarter, very small instrument, and that really gave me a brilliant result. So I think it's really a mixture of both, which is great these days, I think. As SUTU was saying, coming from comics books and doing things on a piece of paper, and also going from, I'm sure that SUTU, you go on, you continue to maybe sometimes in the morning at breakfast, using some pencil and piece of paper or a tablet, and then going from hardware to software.
Yeah, I draw in my little sketchbook every single day. and it's
Yeah.
just it's a nice peaceful way for your mind to kind of still sort of journey off, but to also be tethered to some physical reality, like not always being in virtual world or staring at the screen. So I find like that I I like need that mix actually, and the same as like going for a walk outside and then coming back to the studio space. It's a mix of analog and digital. There's lots of sort of patterns in my life for doing
Yeah, it's
those.
exactly the same. Yes,
Yeah,
I
and
totally understand. Totally agree.
It's
yeah, and I
interesting
suppose
that you
like
mentioned,
yep, you go.
sorry, that you mentioned granular synthesis because I'm also a musician, and I was working with this technique and spatial sound, so inside Unity, and it's really interesting because you can really have this 360 feeling, and with the small grains that you can create, the textures, it's really cool to experiment with.
Yeah, it's sorry, Sutu, you were just saying something.
Oh, I was just going to say, like one of the recent things I've been playing around with was I do a lot of augmented reality as well. And augmented reality is interesting because you're applying a digital layer over the top of the physical reality. So it's really pushing this kind of balance between this digital overlay world and the physical world. And so the last little project that we did was starting to augment people's tattoos. And so you would see the flesh, and then you would see the animations playing over the flesh. And it was such a nice new aesthetic to see that sort of a raw image of the flesh, but then seeing the really hyper-colored digital layer sort of moving over it in such a unnatural way, or a way that we're not used to at the moment. But maybe, like you said before, like once we start to get those glasses that are just making this kind of digital and physical world a bit more seamless, then that might become some sort of new natural for us in the future.
For the future, we can imagine that we can have an implant in our head, and we can decide if we are in the real world or if another VR world. I mean, it's all these kind of things are going to happen, you know.
Maybe
And to answer to the granular comment that you just did just before, I mean, granular synthesis is very interesting because it's very close to what SUTU is explaining, but for the audio. I mean, the fact that suddenly you can visualize, or you can go into the harmonic content of a sound in 3D or in 360 degrees, and suddenly, I mean, recreating almost the cellular aspect, if I can say so, of a sound, and reorganizing it and to give a total different result, and that's quite interesting. I agree.
That actually reminds me. Last week I did a lecture, but I was doing the lecture alongside this one guy called Drew Berry, and he's an Australian artist, but he actually visualizes like DNA at sort of 10,000 times microscopic scale. And his work is revolutionizing the way that we look at anything at that scale, like any molecular structure in our bodies. And I found only actually after meeting him that the Icelandic musician Björk had used his animations in some of her work, but they were actually like referencing real science, and the real science data was driving the way that the animations were moving. And I was like, this is such a like interesting crossover where it was creating such a new, beautiful aesthetic, but it was so informed by reality, and a reality that we ourselves can't see with our naked eye. It was a reality that actually we need bionic eyes to be able to see. So it was such an interesting mix.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is the beauty of what we're talking about. That we see that all the techniques we are talking about are going to allow us to go into the infinite space out there, but also the infinite space inside us. Because what you could say, for instance, what Sutu gave us today, could be also. Let's imagine that it could be inside our body. And you know what in the medicine or biology, they are using nanotechnology these days, where where we can, with very microscopic engine, repairing the body like you are repairing a building or street, but with very nano, small tools. It's exactly the same kind of things. We can tomorrow saying, okay, let's go inside, like you have this movie. I mean, the journey inside the body, and doing this in VR, and the beauty of, I mean, frankly, these days I feel much more in phase in my life as an artist than I was when I started. When I started, I was like, I had that feeling already that I was like dealing with steam machine. Everything was so heavy and so slow, and even if it was fantastic, the first Moog synthesizer, the first modular Moog and all that, but I mean, I was already seeing in my mind what's going on today, and it's such a relief being able to share all this today and being in phase and with my time much more than I felt that I was when I started my work.
Oh, that's great to hear.
Cool.
Yeah, totally. That's so interesting.
Well,
yes,
I
I
haven't
was
got
thinking.
anything. Sorry.
Yeah, I was thinking about. Well, there's other so some of the sort of like new science is talking about sort of like injecting languages straight into your bloodstream, which is a little bit like putting an implant in your brain and accessing another reality. But yeah, that's kind of like the another future that's on the horizon, and my head's kind of been in that space, and I'm wondering, like, in my time, like, will I catch up with that time at some point?
Yeah, it's exactly that. I mean, each generation is actually able to predict what may happen in the future. And I'm quite. This is a personal opinion I wanted to share with you. I mean, lots of people are afraid these days of artificial intelligence, saying it's the end of human beings, of emotions, and all that. And I don't agree at all with that. I mean, as we know, I mean, every generation, our grandparents, our parents, they all said, I mean, yesterday was better, and tomorrow is going to be worse. But if it has been the case, we won't be here in this room today to talk together, because we won't exist anymore. So there is no reason why it won't be the same in the future. And what I think is actually because of AI and because of what you just said about I mean, having the implant to get instant access to languages, or like in the first Matrix, when the girl is on the roof of the building and she just download the instructions to pilot a helicopter. I mean, I think that, I mean, education in the future would be maybe to train our brain, not to train our brain like a hard drive to accumulate informations, but more to be an ideal crossroads from different clouds, where actually informations and everything is out of our brain, and we are using our brain just, I mean, to learn and to use informations outside our brain, and actually to externate information from our brain, where culture will not be what we always thought and our parents were thinking, that is actually to learning things and getting informations inside our body, but leaving all these informations outside, and then just using our brain and our cells to use all these informations out there. And I think that is something that I'm quite curious that may happen in the future.
Yeah, it's also happening.
A month you can get an exabyte of
Sorry?
external brain cloud storage.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think that process of like having these kind of immersive visual experiences changes the way that we take in that information. Like we are at the moment, we are moving through an information world by just being inside this virtual space. So rather than, so what we're doing is we're reformatting this concept of the information enters into our head and it stays there in our brains, but we are instead moving as an entity through a larger space of information. And that kind of changes your relationship with information. So you can actually don't have to feel like you have to cram everything into your brain. You can sort of feel a bit more fluid to move through that space.
Yeah, exactly.
If that makes sense.
I totally agree.
It's a different concept.
Agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
So how So
Yeah.
how will we get more people to enjoy your
You're
work?
quite quiet.
SUTU?
Quite quiet though.
I screamed before.
No.
We will have more shows like this, and also I do a lot of other VR projects, not only on the Wave, but lots of VR stories. So we have
We're never letting
actually...
SUTU out. We're just going to trap him here forever in the Wave.
There's always an
I'm
old
happy to
switcher.
be in the Wave for a while, like so long as like everybody keeps answering all my demands for the new tools. But actually, we have a new Wave show coming up. It's we've been working on it for a little while, and it's an adaptation of Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. For those
great.
of you who don't know this story, it's also the inspiration for Apocalypse Now and Werner Herzog's Aguirre Wrath of God. But in my in my adaptation, it will be a journey into an asteroid, a big long cave into the asteroid where we will meet this other entity. And it, unlike the visuals tonight, where only the visuals are surrounding us, this entire stage that we are standing on will journey through this cave infinitely. And as it journeys through the cave, we will have these different experiences along the way as we get closer and closer to this entity. And we will ask ourselves who we really are.
Can we shoot them? Can we shoot
I
stuff?
will. There is. Yeah, you'll have to see, but that feature doesn't exist yet. So when that exists, the infinite cave travel, I've had a preview of SUTU's story, and it's spectacular. We will look forward to premiering it here.
Yes, amazing. And
Yeah.
also I love the book and the movies coming from the book, and I totally see what you're saying and what you're meaning. It's going to be very exciting. When do you think that could be ready? And
I think it's coming out in
year?
the new year. Yeah, because the guys are actually trying to integrate the journey into the WaveMaker interface. So the WaveMaker interface is the VJ tools that we have here, which means that I can trigger the visuals and the audio. And actually, there's quite a lot of audio narration in it. I actually play the role of Captain Kurtz in this particular story, which is super fun. Yes, I'm an astrobiologist that's gone a bit AWOL. And actually, Jean-Michel, the story is narrated between myself and my AI assistant, because I was, as Kurtz, I was sent up to set up like a kind of like a colony inside this asteroid to, and the AI is my company, but also my advisor and watching my practices and measuring my internal state and trying to keep me healthy. So the whole experience is told from these audio logs of the AI playing back the conversation as they come looking for me inside the asteroid. So you will be hearing the journey of all of these audio logs as we get closer and closer and closer to, well, not me, but Kurtz. And that's much
fantastic.
as I'll tell you.
That's great, fantastic.
It's really
It's
cool.
going to be a lot of fun.
I can't wait. So fantastic.
Yeah, we look forward to making the WaveMaker allow everybody here to tell more and more stories. And Lavender over there is one of our amazing, also resident DJs, who will probably be excited to have new visual tools to play with. We really look forward to continuing to evolve this and like then revisiting, projects like this one with Jean-Michel and with the new abilities. So it's exciting.
As we said, Nicole, we have also so many projects that I will have in mind that I would like to develop with you all guys and with SUTU, of course, and because I have different projects I would like to develop for next year. So let's talk about it in our next meeting.
Oh yeah, our next meeting, absolutely. Wonderful.
Great, thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody. It was so much fun.
I'm very excited for the new WaveMaker tools myself to try and build my own stories, because I, not only as a DJ but as a musician myself, I write my own music. So
yes, I've heard
I've been working on an album.
No, not exactly. There's a lot of, as a resident DJ, you can play US only shows. But you can play. It's a whole long story that it involves the music licensing. But if you're interested in being a resident DJ, join our community on Discord, and check in with us, and then we can take you through everything. But yeah, sorry, Lavender, go ahead. I know you make your own music and stories.
Yeah, and I'm excited to try the new tools because I'm coming to the closing stages of writing my first full-length album, which I want to create a whole audio visual experience in the Wave to launch it as well as a kind of a way to describe the stories that I've been telling with the songs that I've been writing. Because I've been agonizing, I could commission artists to do this, or pictures, or write a story, but I think having seen what's been happening and what new features have been coming forth with the new Wavemaker, debuting it inside the Wave is something I really want to do.
Oh, wonderful. Well, we would be honored to have it here. Yeah. This has been so fun, guys. Everybody's been so cool.
Yeah, it was
you,
really great too, and let's meet again.
Absolutely, we will.
Let's meet again in the virtual world.
We made a little history
to say
today,
thank
so
you and
we'll
how much your music's meant to me through my life since I discovered it when I was maybe 6 or 7 years old, maybe, and your music's been with me all the way through my life, and it's meant such a lot. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Amazing.
Thank you, guys and girls.
Thank you.
Let's keep in touch.
And foxes and rabbits.
That's right.
Yes,
everybody here can do whatever they want. Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for the music, JFK.
And love to all rabbits, dogs, cats, and other creatures. Okay?
Yes.
Okay, take care of yourself. See you soon. Bye-bye, bye-bye. Thank you again, SUTU. Thank you, TheWaveVR, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
And see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Hey, Nick, should I shut this show down now? Would that be the easiest thing to do? Or?
No, don't shut it down. Light it up.
I'm afraid it'll disappear.
Play some more music.
Play that same song again.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thanks.
You don't have to come home, but you can't stay here.
That's right. Just don't go away, Mad. Just go away.